Welcome to the Broken Agenda podcast, sponsored by Laughing Rock Technology.
Whoa!
That's the nitro releasing.
That was. I feel faster.
Jimmy, is there a thing in the bottom of the cans?
Like
a
one of those
little,
balls things?
like a ball thing?
All
Yeah.
right, well, salud. Welcome to the podcast. Jimmy brought us in a special beer for today's broadcast as I sit here with a White Claw next to it. I feel like that's a crime. Nitro Creme Brulee Blackwater Series by Southern Tier Brewing Company. So we just gave them a plug without their permission, but that's not necessarily a good thing. It has to be delicious first before that's a positive plug. But yeah, we'll give you some feedback as we wrap these bad boys up. But my name is Craig Stonaha. This is Jimmy Klopp and Tyler McCauley. This is The Broken Agenda. And today it is December 15th, and we've decided finally, after a lot of hand-wringing, that we were going to tackle COVID and the COVID quote-unquote vaccines. So we don't know how this episode's going to be received. If you're really, really, really passionate about COVID-19 and the vaccines, you might want to skip this one. I don't know if you're going to like what you hear. Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. Either way, I'd rather you not listen if it's going to make you upset. But we're going to cover a lot of topics here. First half of the show is going to be focused a lot on COVID itself, kind of some of the stuff we found. And the big thing we're trying to tackle today, and I don't know if we're going to do a good job of it or not. I mean, I don't know if we ever do a good job here. But the big thing we're trying to tackle is everybody seems to have information. Everybody's information seems to be different, and everybody seems to think everybody else's information is fake. So what we're trying to do here is focus on things we know. Focus on things that are true, and focus on things that maybe do make sense or don't make sense from a fact-based, logic-based standpoint. Some of these things will be, I don't know. There's no politics in this. Like we're not getting involved in the politics of COVID or anything like that. But there is a lot of weird crap going on. I mean, do you guys agree with that? I mean, it just seems like the COVID world is nuts across the board. Doesn't matter where you land in your opinion of COVID and vaccines and everything else, but everybody seems nuts.
I'm going to say, if you can't agree that the world is weird right now.
No, then you're really weird.
Holy crap, that's delicious. Sorry, I took my first sip. That's really good. Thank you, Jimmy. Well played.
All right.
Sorry, yeah. If you can't, you're right. If we can't agree at least to that, then I don't know that we're ever going to agree to anything ever again.
No, I don't think so.
Those days are gone. They're like a thing of the past.
Don't go to negative town on me, man. Like they're coming back. They're coming. Hootie's coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna happen. We're just a bump in the road. This is a speed bump. We ran into some weird times. It's happened in the past before. So
Doesn't it go in waves? Like early 2000s, everybody was a patriot. And
well, I don't want to break the agenda completely 3 seconds in. But did you start the timer, by the way?
oh yeah, I'll start it.
But have you guys ever read the book The Fourth Turning?
No, actually, I think you told me
attorney?
about it.
The Fourth Turning.
Oh, turning no.
And I'm not going to make this a book review podcast, but it's a phenomenal book. It was written back in the mid-'90s, I think. And the whole concept of the book is it's a research-based book. And tons of research went into this, and essentially through history, humans operate on a quad cycle, 4 equal components, generally about 25 years. And everyone is called a turning. And the fourth turning, which in the mid-'90s they predicted would happen at approximately 2020, nailed it. The fourth turning is always revolution. And they don't make any predictions. They don't say where it's going to land or how it's going to end. They just say that this is how society works. There's always and I don't want to get into all the details of it. You got to read the book. I didn't write it. I'm not going to, this isn't Cliff Notes. But it's an amazing book if you like to read studies of human nature, human knowledge, everything else. They say a lot of it makes sense because for most of history, knowledge was handed down verbally. So by the time you get 100 years in, there's nobody alive who still remembers the actual facts.
Yeah.
So the actual truth behind what happened gets completely
Muddied,
bastardized.
muddied water.
Muddy and everything else. And then that generation seems to think that they can do it better because they don't They don't have anybody to tell them they're being stupid.
So based on that book, are we in the fourth turning?
That book said we would be in the fourth turning here around 2018, 2020, and they were right. And they don't tell you what's going to happen. They said it can go any which way. The revolution doesn't mean it's going to be good, doesn't mean it's going to be bad, doesn't mean it's going to end well, doesn't mean it's going to be positive. In the end, it just means that there's going to be civil strife, and we'll have to deal with it. So, but they predicted it pretty much spot on to the year. What was that, 25 years ago plus?
Yeah.
So they were in the third turning.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And 25 years ago, we were in the third turning?
Yeah, well, a turning is approximately 25 years. It ebbs and flows, but approximately.
So people can only cooperate to work together for like 100 years?
No. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that that's about how long a generation is, and the generations will feed off the previous generation. So the attitudes of the generation coming out of the Great Depression would have defined that turning, which would have led to the next generation's view of the world based off of what they experienced from their parents. And it will follow through generationally as society evolves in a circle and
then
basically keeps turning.
By 4 generations, they're like, what is wrong with these people?
Well, and then by that point, there's enough
This
people
is
on the
just-
planet that don't know anybody that was associated with those previous turnings, because they're all so new and they're all so old or dead, that they start repeating all the same things. They start doing it all again because they think they're smarter. They think they're better. They think that the Constitution doesn't apply to them, or they think that, I would have never fallen for the financial traps that led to the Great Depression, or they think that, I would have never ended up in a civil war. They always think they're smarter than the people that came before them, but it's not true. I mean, we've had some amazing
Everything,
smart people on this planet.
it's like it's that old thing, drop a frog in a boiling pot of water, he'll jump out, but if you put him in the water and cook it real slow, he doesn't realize he's boiling.
The slow boil of society. That's what our book will be.
It's kind of the same. It's a similar thing. Like, you don't realize it's going around you while it's just this slow progress, and it's each step. And it seems like this last 2 years with COVID and riots and is like a huge cataclysmic leap
The water started
towards.
bubbling.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like exactly.
But we never
like
jumped
all of
out.
a sudden, it's like, but everybody's scrambling saying the water's boiling now.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That's kind of what it is.
Something, I don't know.
It's a weird, and I think COVID is, in my opinion, there's so many weird things going on right now, but COVID, in my opinion, is got to be the weirdest, because so much of it just doesn't make a lot of sense in so many ways. I mean, I don't know. Am I wrong on that? Like, do you guys think COVID? I mean, it's basically it's a coronavirus, right? We've had coronaviruses forever.
It's a cold.
That would be a rhinovirus, but yeah.
Yeah.
But coronavirus. Hell, Lysol cans have been treating coronaviruses since Lysol first made Lysol. It's on the can. So we've known about coronaviruses forever. We've predicted worse coronaviruses would show up over time, and that's fine. We knew stuff like we've had SARS, we've had previous coronavirus outbreaks. Now, granted, this is, it appears to be the worst one yet of a coronavirus variant. But one of the first items I have here on the agenda is another book. And for those of you that don't know, and I come off pretty dumb. But I read a lot. Whether or not I remember it or can actually portray it properly is different. But there's another book called Viral. And Viral, I'm not done reading it yet. So I hate talking about a book on the air that I haven't finished. But the whole idea behind the book Viral, it is an in-depth study of the actual facts we have related to the coronavirus, the COVID-19 outbreak. So it's none of this like we think. There's no theory involved. There's no leaps of faith trying to come to a conclusion. It's basically saying, here is what we know.
It's not a summarized news report.
No, it's not an opinion piece, an op-ed in New York Times. Yeah, this is we talk to the scientists on the ground, we talk to the doctors, we talk to the people at the Wuhan lab, we talk to the Americans that were engaged, we talked to all the researchers that went out and did follow-up work, we talked to everybody, and we put together a pretty darn accurate timeline with all of the available information at the time of the writing. I think this was published it's only a couple months old. It was published back in October or November. So it's a new book. So it's got some pretty darn good information in it. And the guy who wrote it is not. There's no political slant here. I mean, he's a scientist. Essentially, the idea of the book, and I haven't finished it, but so far is that there's no evidence this thing happened naturally. Zero. They couldn't. They couldn't find any evidence at the wet markets that there was ever an outbreak or that there was ever presence of the variant that infected humans.
Yeah.
They couldn't find any evidence of any of the stories that were given. That I mean, there's no evidence. He doesn't get into the Wuhan lab theory, but he does get into publishes the papers on the research that was being done at Wuhan. He does publish the firsthand accounts from people that worked at Wuhan, who all attested that they were working on this virus in this way. So there's a lot of evidence there saying that the Wuhan lab leak theory has a lot of validity, but he doesn't get into that. What he does get into is the only naturally occurring place where this virus even exists is in a remote area of China, 1,500 miles away, that nobody goes to.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is crazy that we have. What drives me crazy is we have theories on this.
Well, but when you said about the back at the wet market, like there was an issue with them racing in there and cleaning that place out so that they weren't able to do kind of a I don't know if it would be considered an investigation if you're doing not an investigation, but they were sending scientists in there, I guess, to sweep the place.
Can't clean out a thing like that. Plus, they did find evidence of plenty of other viruses and bacteriums, including versions of coronavirus, which were on the same variant strain as COVID-19, but none of them capable of infecting humans. So it's not whatever they did a really poor job of, so you would expect to find evidence. Plus, every single infectious disease that we've ever tracked always has precipitating events. Smaller localized outbreaks or initial outbreaks or whatever. There are places you can look at and say, okay, well, here we had a flare-up, and then it went larger and regional, and then national and then international, whatever. We can't find a single incident of this thing flaring up anywhere before it showed up in Wuhan. Mm-hmm. And we can't find any evidence that it showed up in Wuhan anywhere public. So I understand what you're saying, but he goes into all that and says none of that.
Yeah, I was inquiring. I wasn't.
No, it's a good inquiry because a lot of people say that, but there's no evidence any of that is true. Now, they have since shut down, they've actually banned all information from the Wuhan lab. So we can't really carry this investigation forward. China has locked it all down. They won't allow anybody to look at anything or talk to anyone anymore.
So we essentially believe at this point that this is like definitely these people that wrote the book, they're scientists, correct? They did. So they did studies and they're convinced it's out of the lab.
No, they're not. They don't give you any opinions in the book.
Oh,
they're just presenting facts.
What they're doing is they are saying what they found, what they ruled out based on their findings, and what that leaves. And they say, now, we don't know until we have verifiable, quantifiable, definitive evidence. We won't make a statement on what happened. But we can tell you that the wet market story seems to be absolute bunk. Like, we don't even know where that came from. Was it just invented? Was it intentionally seeded to the press? We don't know. But
well, that would have been the cover-up for the lab.
That would make. I mean, yeah.
But this isn't conspiracy theory segment.
No. And I mean,
but well, and on that, I don't know. I mean, people are going to think that some of this is conspiracy theory, right?
Well, I mean, are we giving theories?
No, but I think at least because it's a weird world, anytime you bring a counterpoint to what's said in the mainstream is considered a conspiracy or misinformation.
Well, what I will say is I have seen many a book that does exactly what Jimmy said earlier, which is makes assumptions based on the evidence.
Yeah, so they're
I didn't bring any of those books to the agenda,
right?
Because this one doesn't do that.
Yeah,
this one backs up every single statement they make in the book. They back up with fact. So if you call this a conspiracy theory, you are intentionally being obtuse. You are trying to be difficult. If you actually care about the truth, this book is a great place to start because it doesn't get into any assumptions or any theories. It simply states what we know.
Yeah.
This is a complete antithesis to an opinion piece. Mm-hmm. It doesn't give any opinion. It just says, here's what we actually know. Here's the documents that support it. Here's what we've been able to find. Here's where we had to stop because we weren't allowed to go any further.
Yeah.
And it basically builds you a box and says, here's the things that are outside the box. We won't theorize on that because we don't have it. Here's what's inside the box. So we'll tell you what we can prove based on what we know. And here's a list of things that we would like answers on that we either can't get or haven't gotten yet. And I think that's a great way for everyone to back up and start over. Like, I love this book in the fact that it doesn't get into the conspiracy theories.
That's the book I've been looking for.
You know, you'd think that like the Wuhan lab should have been like confiscated. You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't have been. They should not be not allowed to let people in there. You know, when like you just if it's part of a scenario where you have an outbreak of this caliber across the entire globe, and then they're saying no, you can't investigate.
It's China. The most horrible nation on earth.
Well, if there's any it seems like there should be a world movement to go in and confiscate the lab.
And meanwhile, I have
from
to
every single country on the planet.
There should be. Well,
You
want to give your?
I was gonna say. I mean, you could. I'm not gonna take this in any kind of lean or conspiracy thing, but if you want, just pull up something on Google and try to read about some theories why we didn't go into the Wuhan lab or why we were misdirected from it. I'm not going to say them out loud, but it's just some stuff I read.
You can say them out loud. Just
So-
don't subscribe to them. Don't recommend
I would
them.
say, like, I don't necessarily subscribe. It's just something I picked up and read and haven't really fully researched. But some of the theories around why we were originally misdirected was the U.S. had a vested interest in gain of function research. Since that's illegal in the U.S., they could do it in China. And if, the world were to enter the Wuhan lab and find out, that creates a massive international issue.
So this is basically the Guantanamo Bay of viruses.
I mean, that's some theories, right?
I mean, the theories are fun to read. They are. And
Yeah,
people put
that's
a lot
what-
of great thought into
yeah.
them. I hate the theories.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like even if they make total sense to you, it's still a theory. And I'm way too analytical to put my weight behind a theory until I can verify it. But, I mean, isn't that the whole idea of what's happening right now in our legal system? You get a bunch of people that want to make a snap judgment as soon as an issue's over. Nobody wants to wait for the investigation. Nobody wants to wait it takes years for the legal system to process a case.
Yeah.
By design. You're supposed to let heads cool. And you're supposed to let facts prevail. But nobody wants to do that anymore.
Yeah, but you gotta let people into the lab to get facts.
Well,
But it is also
the not being able to get into the lab thing, that is good luck with that. That's China's lab, and China
Yes.
doesn't put up with squat.
Yeah, and
If China says you
I
ain't
mean-
getting in, you ain't getting in.
yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we could just be being fed propaganda. I mean, I guess we're not. Obviously, there's plenty of information out there that the lab is connected, but I mean, I don't know. I guess would we want countries coming in here, taking a lab from us? Like, I don't know, man. It's such a hard, for the entire world, all the countries to interact in harmony is like almost impossible.
It is impossible.
But you'd think like if this is not something that was intentional or it was not negligent, they would let you in the lab. You know what I mean? It's like there's no reason to keep people out of the lab.
Well, I don't like that theory
Unless
either,
there's-
because I hate when people say if you have nothing to hide, then why don't you want to let the cops go through your glove box?
Yeah. Right.
Like I hate that. I hate
Why
that theory.
shouldn't
Well,
you?
wouldn't you want to figure it out? Like, I mean, if I had the lab and I was like, holy crap, we had an outbreak infected the world, like, we got to, like, if we figure it out or we do this or we work together, we can figure this out. and
I
solve
bet
the
you
problem.
$100 China wants to figure it out. They just don't want to talk to the rest of us. Like, then that's the difference. Like, there's our lab in our country. We're
We'll
going to figure out
figure it
what
out.
we figure out, and whether or not we share those findings with you, we'll figure out. We'll decide later.
Or what we share with you.
Or whether or not what we share with you is true.
Exactly.
We'll decide that after we do what we do, but you stay the heck out. And I got to be honest, if the U.S. was doing gain of function, which there was a lot of evidence that they were, but there's nothing concrete at this point, but a lot of circumstantial evidence. If they were, I blame the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I expect China to do shady China stuff. I mean, China's China. They're a pretty horrible country. But when the U.S. does stuff like this on foreign soil, specifically to not get caught, I 100% dump all the blame on their lab.
I guess you're right. I mean, why would we we have no clout whatsoever? We were involved in it.
We're just dumping money over to a Chinese lab. I mean, that seems like a great idea. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Jeez. So anyway, so viral. It's my recommendation for anybody that wants actual facts on where this thing came from.
Maybe part of the thing is maybe it's like our country is part of like putting up the blockade to questions about the law.
Well, I think that's part of what Tyler was
That's
saying.
That's part of if you search, that's part of the theory. Now, I haven't found any evidence that puts that as fact. It's just all kind of bullet points that stack up and lean that way. So don't subscribe to anything, but
Powerful people playing their games.
I mean, who's to say what they do at the top levels? The stuff we don't know about.
As Indiana Jones would say, top men, Tyler. Top men. Do you guys even know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that movie?
No, I don't remember
You
that
remember
part
that?
of it. I remember the movie, but not that part.
Oh, it was always one of my favorite parts. We have people on the Ark of the Covenant, Indiana. Well, who's on it? Top men. Which top men? Top men.
The men at the top
I just always like, I always love that line.
are on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, before we move on to the next section, do you guys think we'll ever get an answer on this?
No, it's gonna all be swept under the carpet.
I don't know. It's tough because I want to try to use
Maybe
history
15
as
years from now, we'll find out that this was this was the largest scam against the population of the globe.
Here's what I think. I think we will find out about it, but they'll dangle something else in front of us that'll take our interest more.
Yeah, kind of like how they dropped UFOs during
That's
COVID.
literally the example.
And now everybody's like, "Oh, really? UFOs? Oh yeah, oh, yeah." And like,
Not-
it's not even like people don't even like.
Not to shatter the agenda again, but yeah, people didn't even pay attention. They were like they literally were like, yeah, we've got
Martians.
like 5,000 records of UFOs.
Yeah, aliens are real. Yeah. Oh yeah. By the way, aliens are real. COVID outbreak. Oh yeah, aliens are real. Yeah, they're real. Yep. We found them. We got spaceships and everything. Yep. Cool.
People are like, we don't care about that right now. Shut up, Dan.
When are we gonna get our vaccine?
I want my stimmy check.
Yeah. Give me my check and my vaccine.
Oh my god. The weirdest world. All right. So maybe we'll find out about that when we find out who killed Kennedy. All right. So, I mean, the next thing I had on here that I wanted to bring up, only because, again, back to this misinformation conversation, this how we count deaths thing bothers me. Have you guys read this article that I mentioned in here?
I did not.
Did you ever see any of the interviews with the Department of Health officials?
Nope.
Okay, that's fine.
After the first
I mean, I've
3
read
months of
enough
COVID?
stuff to know that the count was extremely retarded.
But
But that's not politically correct.
what, the count or the word you just
The
used?
word I used. That
Okay,
was
fair
that was bad choice of words. Very bad choice of words. I apologize
Man,
out
I
loud.
gotta find that and censor it.
I don't know. Do we bleep that? Like, we've
We're-
never bleeped before.
Honestly, no, we haven't. We'll just leave it.
We're really going to be in trouble now.
There's a comedian that talks about words like how some words are worse than other words. and in his skit, he did a skit about the word, and he used the word midget, and he got called out about it. And they're like, "You can't use that word." And he goes, "That's like the F word." And his response was, I guarantee you it's not as bad as the F word, because if there's 2 words and one of them you will say and the other one you won't say to me in a closed room with just 2 people, the one you won't say, the F word, is definitely the worst word, or the N word. Sorry, the N word. Yeah, because that's definitely the worst word. I always found that to be hysterical. So I'm like, that is funny. But yeah, we're gonna steer clear of the R word.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just for practical purposes.
Yeah. I don't think it should really be related to people anymore. It's just a word that should be used for a descriptive word.
Look, man, that's a different podcast.
It's 2021. man.
It's a different podcast. We can definitely get into words. We can do a whole podcast on
I
words.
I used it as a descriptive word, for something that's utterly stupid.
Well,
So we can revert back.
the world's gotten
Yeah,
so
the way
dumb.
they-
I've just started making up my own words.
The way they count COVID deaths is utterly stupid.
Utterly stupid. I like that. Hasn't been
Is
banned
that
yet.
is that? Can I use that word?
It'll get banned soon.
Stupid.
But you can use it today.
Okay.
It's still cool. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's this one bothers me. And this one bothers me for a couple of reasons. One of the big reasons it bothers me is I had a friend who died of pneumonia during COVID. This year, actually, probably back in March, April. And he went into a hospital, and this isn't necessarily about how we count deaths, but I'm going to get into that. He went into a hospital, and he had a cough, and he was sick, and he had a fever, and they gave him a COVID test, and it came back negative, and they sent him home. Mm-hmm. And he came back, and they did the exact same thing, and they sent him home. They never checked for anything else. They gave him a COVID test. When he didn't have COVID, they sent him home. Finally had to get an ambulance to pick him up at his house, brought him in. Turns out he had pneumonia, but it was so severe they couldn't treat it.
Yeah.
And this guy was like 54 years old and in good health. He had been sick for like 3.5, 4 weeks, and he drowned. He died.
Yeah.
Because they never actually checked if he was sick. They don't check for anything but COVID anymore. Like if I go to the hospital, I hope to have COVID because at least they'll try to do something.
Yeah.
Like if I have anything else, like I could have a broken arm with like my radial bone sticking out of my skin, and they'll give me a COVID test and send me home. They'll be like, well, you don't have COVID. We don't know what it could be. I'm like, you want to see the bone? And they'll be like, yeah, but that's not COVID. So we don't know anything else. And a lot of this comes from the way they were counting these deaths is crazy. I mean, there's an article that I sent to you, Jimmy.
Now they probably said he died of COVID, right?
Well, and they probably did. No.
Yeah, because COVID killed him. Because they
misdiagnosed it. That's a COVID death. Well, I mean, this Cheryl Atkinson wrote a couple of articles on this. A bunch of people wrote articles on this. We've got a bunch of video clips of health officials, attesting to all of this. So this is all true. This is not conspiracy theory. Like, again, we're going to get back to, we're just talking about facts. But the facts of it were that it doesn't really matter for a long time there how you died. If you were murdered and you were shot and you went to the hospital and they tested you for COVID and you had COVID and then you died of your bullet wound, it was a COVID death.
Well, that's how the hospitals get the check, right?
Well, and that I couldn't confirm. I keep hearing that, and I could not find any evidence of. I've had nurses tell me that. I've had a lot of third party people tell me there are checks associated with the amount of COVID cases that you have. But
Was it per case?
I can't verify that.
It was a per case thing. Well, I don't know where I read it or how I heard it. I mean, I talked to nurses. So they were getting, if the person came in and they put them on a ventilator, they were getting something like $30,000 or $40,000 per patient.
Can we verify this?
And then,
and that's
if they just took on a patient, then it was something like.
If we can't verify it, I don't want to talk about it because I would love to verify that because I've heard the same thing, but hearing it and being able to prove it is two very different things, and nobody in the finance department of hospitals is talking to me.
Yeah, I don't know if we can give that.
I believe it was something that was said by a politician. Out loud.
Politicians say a lot of things.
They say a lot of stuff. I don't believe any of them.
I mean,
and I've heard a lot.
I imagine you can find it. Where
the whole idea of
talked about it, and I guess we'd have to search.
The problem is, I want evidence. I want to see money moving from some government agency into a hospital's coffers, and the RE on the check saying because you had a lot of COVID patients. I want some sort of verification that this is happening. These stories drive me crazy because even if they may be true, they may very well be true, and I hope they're not, but they could be. But if I can't verify it, I'm not going to talk about it.
That was
I don't want to co-sign more misinformation on this show.
Say a lot of this is very much like pass it down the lane. The game you played when you were a kid.
It was to help, but it was
the
just
person
to
close says the right thing, and then 4 people later, they got millions of dollars because they had 3 patients.
Yes.
So
I think it was just designed to help the hospitals because the hospitals were turning away patients.
Then here's the thing.
And only allowing their doors open to COVID.
If that's true, there's got to be a paper trail. So we should be able to find it. There has to be evidence.
I'm pretty sure we can find that.
Well, let's find it and we'll do a recap.
I don't know that I can do it right now.
No, don't do it right now. We'll do a recap on it and we'll figure it out. But we do know for a fact that they were miscounting cases. Now, that could be, I don't know why. I'm not going to speculate on why. It could be because they were getting kickbacks. I don't know. It could be that they were counting them fine in the beginning.
Well, they were trying to
and as it went
not
on,
go
because
bankrupt.
of the quantity of cases, they were just like, if it said COVID, chalk it up to COVID. They just were inundated. I don't know the why behind it. What I do know is it led to a significant amount of panic and misinformation about how likely you were to die, how common it was to die, all of these things. You scared a lot of people, got their pants scared off. There was a town in California, it wasn't Pasadena, it was another town, but there was a town in California where went through and readjusted their numbers based off of the fact that they had been told by Department of Health official for California that this was happening, and 30% of their deaths went away. 30%. That's a huge. I was like 3%. It was 30% of their deaths for COVID. They're like, no, yeah, that wasn't COVID. There are
Evaporated?
people that are still alive that were.
Did somebody steal them?
And they're like, I'm still here. Like,
Did some-
I'm fine. I survived. And they're still marked as COVID deaths.
Did someone steal those deaths?
I don't. It probably. Probably went to
Somebody broke in and stole them?
LA. Probably took them. Sorry, LA. Correction. Suck it, LA.
We really hate California on this podcast.
Well, you know what? I just like ragging on California because first of all, they're all tucked away down there. They're not gonna mess with me. And second of all, they make it so easy. You know,
Yeah, they really do.
it's like picking on the weirder of your two brothers. Like, he's just lobbing them up there. Like, every time I turn around, California's doing something that's funny to me. Plus, I think most people outside of California is very much the New Jersey of the West Coast.
Right.
Like, if you're in New Jersey, you're rabidly supportive of New Jersey.
Yep.
But even if you're 1 mile out of New Jersey, you're like, no, New Jersey sucks. Like, everybody outside of New Jersey recognizes that New Jersey's terrible. California's like that.
No, you're absolutely right.
Nevada, people in Nevada 1 mile over the border are like, no, they're nuts over there. I wouldn't cross those mountains.
It's like there are these places that attract the worst people.
And apparently they all have boats.
And then they flock to the same area.
Yeah, they do. Well, now they're exporting them.
Yeah.
Shipping them all over. That scares me.
I don't know. I don't know enough people in Jersey to really say one way or the other. That was probably a very...
It's a cheap shot, but I like making cheap shots in Jersey. I went to a college that was very heavy on New Jersey students. And man, I loved ragging on New Jersey students because they get so
same we
sensitive.
did.
They get so sensitive. They make
We're
us-
the best. No, you're
and
not.
they would try to counter me by making fun of Pennsylvania. And my response every time was, "Yeah, we know. Hey, you're
okay
making
with
fun
it."
of us. We know we're terrible at that. Like, we know we're pretty terrible across the board. It's Pennsylvania. Like, what do you think? I'm gonna get upset? There's no pride in Pennsylvania. like, oh no, we made fun of our cow tipping. We know we cow tip. It's ridiculous. We're fully aware.
Really tell me you don't want to come cow tip.
And if I invited you,
Yeah.
you'd come.
Believe me, you come
You
cow tip.
hypocritical New Jersey cow tipping son of a R word.
Get off the boardwalk.
Get off the boardwalk.
Get off the boardwalk. Come cow tipping.
Have you ever been cow tipping?
No, I mean,
I haven't either.
I'm surprised I didn't when I was younger. We talked about it all the time, but yet we never seemed to materialize.
I don't think it's as common as people
It's
think.
it's really not.
No.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that I was a getaway car and somebody was showing me to cow tip and they tried to push the cow and they couldn't push it over. And then
Yeah,
it
do you
chased
know
them out of the field.
Big those things are.
I kind of think I recall
do.
that vaguely.
They're pretty big.
They're big.
They're pretty big.
Yeah.
I don't think I grew up in Pennsylvania and not in the urban part. And I don't know of a single human being that's ever gone cow tipping.
I mean, I drove my car through cornfields
I did that
many a
once.
time.
I popped all 4 tires doing it.
That's pretty crazy. I'm going to go off topic.
Okay.
So we had a New Year's party, and it was great. So we were just at this guy's house, and so it started off. We had this gigantic food fight. I mean, it was just like,
Only in America.
I mean,
All right. Make it quick. We're
all
at
right.
time.
So we just blasted this crazy food fight. Food all over his dining room, all over his walls and everything. Guy's name was Dave Swope, and
Ooh,
I graduated. I graduated with his sister Laura, and then just met him later. I guess through a group
Nobody
of
cares about
friends
this
we
part.
had.
Get
Yeah, I
to
know.
the food fight.
So anyway, so we ended up leave. So we left out. He wanted to go for a drive. We all hopped in his he had like a Blazer or something. So we start driving around, and he's like, "We're going to Blue Marsh to go. We're gonna go out on the ice."
Even our lake names suck.
Yeah.
Like we have a lake and we call it a marsh. It's like we're trying in Pennsylvania to make it look worse than it is, and it's already not great. Go ahead. Sorry.
So he ends up blasting through. I don't even remember if we took a road. I think he just started right through cornfields from his house. We were headed towards the lake through cornfields. Next thing you know, were on the freaking lake on the ice.
what?
Just came plowing out of a cornfield right on ice, and he's like, "Whoa!" So he slams it in reverse back.
Does that work on ice? That's not gonna work on
He
ice.
got off. He got off of it, and then we went out. And
The ice held a car?
Yeah.
How cold was it?
I don't think it was. It wasn't like it was just a backwash area.
My daughter.
So it wasn't like it was probably like a couple feet deep, but I mean it was cold. It was a really cold winter that
Wow.
year. But yeah, we got out into the middle of the lake and backed out, and there was like 6 people in the car. And then we left the car sit there and shined the headlights, and we all skated on the ice.
Jimmy, I know
No ice skates, of course, just our sneakers.
We have to take a break.
We
but
sneaker
I just
skated.
want to say before we break that you have the most American stories of anything being on the internet. Every story you tell feels like America, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's like a dysfunctional Norman Rockwell painting. With a lot of cans of Miller Lite.
I never told you about our treehouse.
No, we're not talking about it anymore. Save that one for the next podcast. We got to take a break. We've got somebody gave us money, I'm sure, for this, so we're going to talk about them now.
Southern Tier.
And we're back. And for anybody who doesn't know, if you're listening to this on a podcast station like Reddit, or if you're listening on Spotify or something like that, we do have video as well, if you're not aware, on the YouTube podcast versions, where we flip through a lot of the stuff we're talking about. You might hear us referencing fact-based material that we're talking about, like we're looking at it. We're not just looking at a tablet while we're talking into a mic. We actually have video that supports everything we're saying. So if you ever want to see what it is we're talking about, especially on the NFT episodes, I know Jimmy went through a lot that was visual we didn't mention.
Yeah, I say there's a lot to see.
There is a visual component to this too if you ever want to see it. So whatever, enough of that. We got through the first part of our agenda. We actually did remarkably well, even though we did hear a story about Jimmy's corncob adventures. There was one thing we missed. So the first part of this was to talk about COVID. The second part was to talk about the vaccine. But the one thing we didn't talk about was just the investigating and the counting of breakthrough cases. Have you guys been tracking this at all?
No.
Do you know what I mean by breakthrough cases?
Breakthrough cases. No.
Okay. People who have are considered quote unquote fully vaccinated and then get COVID.
Oh.
And then what are the end results? Have you guys been tracking any of this?
No.
No, not closely.
Great. Neither has the U.S. government. Nobody is tracking breakthrough case information. I mean, the EU is. They're doing a pretty good job. Jerusalem's doing an amazing job. They've kind of been the leaders in this whole COVID-19 thing. UK is doing a really good job, too. Most of the information I get is out of the UK and out of Jerusalem, out of Israel, because they actually track everything. The U.S. just, if you get vaccinated, they just ignore you. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You cannot find stats on breakthrough cases in the U.S. It's the weirdest thing.
It's interesting because I feel like I hear about a lot of vaccinated people getting COVID and, frankly, more likely to get COVID, at least in the stories I've heard.
I don't know. I will say I can't tell you about the U.S. Like
Yeah.
it's and anecdotally, I've anecdotally.
I don't know.
Anecdotally,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of the same stories.
Yeah.
I will say there is a UK study that came out that was quite large. It was a lot of people that actually was very, very negative on the vaccine. Essentially said that vaccinated people, now that we have a high percentage of when I say vaccinated, I'm talking about Moderna, Johnson & Johnson,
Yeah.
any of these prophylactic drugs that are being called vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
But they're actually, and I'm not going to quote it because I don't have the stats in front of me here, but both the Jerusalem study and the UK study were very, very critical of these mRNA vaccines that we're currently using to fight COVID. I strongly encourage anybody out there to go look these things up, but they're wild.
But do they discuss, like, I feel like people who are vaccinated are more likely to, like, I'm not a...
Yes, the UK study goes into the fact
It does.
that the vast majority of their hospitalizations and their deaths are fully vaccinated people right now.
Okay.
Now, you're going to get multiple arguments on that. Some people are going to say, well, that's because so many people are vaccinated. you have such a high majority of the population that is vaccinated that it would track that a majority of the people that get hospitalized and die of COVID would also be vaccinated because there's such a high populace. My argument to that is the whole idea of getting the mRNA vaccinations is that you don't get hospitalized and die. So that very argument does not track for me. But some people will say that. My concern is that it is even a stat that we're looking at. I mean, I think they followed something like 2 million people. This was not like one of these studies you read in Time magazine where they're like, we followed 247 individuals. It's like, there's 8 billion people
It's
on
a
the
nice
planet.
sample size.
Yeah, that is junk science at its finest. Like, that's nothing. This was like 2 million people they followed. And without a doubt, the vaccinated people fared far worse than the unvaccinated. So they're still compiling the whys of it, which why is the only question I really care about. But
Yeah, and I've questioned that because I forget who was telling me it, but essentially, I know someone who went and got tested, they were vaccinated. They didn't test positive for COVID recently.
okay.
And they were already quite a few days in. So, and they said, well, I could get a negative test because my viral load wasn't big enough. And then I said, but
No.
You
you're
get a
showing
viral load.
your viral load. Now, this is a person who has knowledge of the testing procedures.
What is viral load?
Oh, we're gonna get into that.
Yeah, like how much the virus has replicated itself within inside of you.
All right, so let's get into. You asked what is viral load. Here's one of the biggest misconceptions about how this type of virus works. There are two ways that you can possess a viral load. And a viral load is how much of the virus is present in your body. It's not the type of load that you're talking about. That's very inappropriate.
Always.
I mean,
Always.
Every time. Drop the R word. Now he's giggling at the word load. Like, I can't have a podcast with this guy. It's impossible.
I feel like I'm back in the 6th grade.
I know, right? What the heck?
Come on, Jimmy.
He's
grow
going to wipe
up.
a booger on my shirt. I guarantee it. Like, that's where we're heading with this thing.
You call you names.
guy's got a viral load going on.
Unbelievable. Trying to have reasonable conversation. You give
I had
him
to
one
say
milk
it.
stout. That's one milk stout, and he well, two technically.
Yeah, he's like
That's
one
why
and
he's
a half.
hammered.
I didn't finish.
Jimmy's
the second
hammered, so we apologize, everybody.
one. I just started the second one.
I mean, that's just what we saw you drink.
I didn't. Hey, I'm not the one that said it.
Tyler
said it.
totally
Yeah,
said it.
Tyler said
He
it.
totally said it. There are two locations in your body where viral quantity matters. So one is in your bloodstream, where the virus replicates internally inside your body. This is where the mRNA virus appears to have the best result. So it gets in and it affects the spike proteins to cause the vaccine or cause the virus to fail to be able to infiltrate the cell. The quote unquote vaccines, the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, all of these vaccines, they do not do anything for your peripheral security of your body, which would be your sinuses, which would be your throat, all these areas that are outside your internal workings, outside your bloodstream. So what Tyler's saying doesn't make any sense from what he was told, because everything we know, and this is from the NIH, this is from Fauci himself has said this, which, all hail Fauci. This is from the CDC, this is from the WHO, and this is from multiple independent health agencies from other countries, says that none of these vaccine products that we're pushing have any impact whatsoever on that secondary virus location, where it replicates in your sinuses, where it replicates in your throat, where it replicates in the entry points of your body outside of your bloodstream. And why that matters is because for that reason, you are just as infectious if you're vaccinated as if you're not vaccinated. Because that is where you spread the vaccine. How sick you get is how much it permeates your body, where it goes, what organs it affects, how far it gets into your cellular, your cellular makeup. All of that depends on how many symptoms you'll present.
Right.
But the fact that it can live in your nose the exact same way, whether you have the vaccine or not, means that if you sneeze, you're spreading it just as much as anybody else is spreading it. So the vaccine, and this, I was telling a story before we got on the podcast today about somebody who wouldn't hang out with me because there was a person that was going to be with us who wasn't vaccinated. And I told them, I said, well, look, that shouldn't matter. And he said, of course it matters. I don't want to get sick. And I said, well, you're vaccinated and they're not. And I said, and both of you have an equal ability to transmit the virus to each other The big difference is that you're vaccinated, so theoretically you should have an extra layer of protection that he will not. So if anything, he's at more risk than you are, because you can get him sick just as easily as he can get you sick, but he can get sicker, according to what we're being told. And he would not believe me. But the bottom line is, this has been parroted repeatedly. This is a known factor. The fact that people who believe that they are immune when they get the virus do not believe that this is a fact is a very big problem we have right now. They think that somehow unvaccinated people are propagating the virus.
Well, and I feel like that's a big product of the general fear mongering that's been taking place. Like, where can you go that you don't see something regarding the dangers of COVID, right? You search Google, it's there. Go on Reddit and go into a comment section, and the first comment nearly in every subreddit is a post about misinformation and how bad COVID is and stuff. It's everywhere. You go to the mall, you go to the grocery store, there's signs everywhere. So there's a lot of fear mongering that's happening, a lot of propaganda, which...
But what's bothersome to me is that it's gotten so bad that we're willing to ignore fact.
Well, and that's we're right? We're creatures of we're animalistic, right? So in groups, I think we were saying that before. And fear is a very strong emotion. In any, I mean, there's millions of examples of this, but fear is usually leveraged to get people to comply to certain things. So lean into the fear, and you lean into the primal instincts a bit, and you create teams, and you create people who hate other people. And
so the whole idea behind this podcast is to fight against non-fact. Do you think people will think we're now conspiracy theorists because I just said that?
See, I think so. Well, I think, and it's going to come with the territory, right? Anytime you say you're going to talk about COVID, unless you're spreading the information that everyone else is spreading, and you're not, like, I'm a very factual person. Like, I don't care about the emotion in arguments. I don't get into the politics of everything. I just want to see the facts and kind of guide myself based on what I learn. But most of humanity's not that way. They like the raw emotion. They like the drama. And if you're not on their team, then they hate you, right? I mean, look at society today. Pick a team, and that's the team you're on. There is no middle ground. You're one side or you're the other side.
Tyler, I'm on your team.
That's cool. I don't really have a team.
Yeah,
Team Tyler. I'm on your team,
I
Tyler.
don't either. I'm on the no team.
Like, I'm good with it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine being on my own.
You know, I think what I struggle more with than anything is I can't wrap my brain around a person's thought process who got the vaccine and then is mad at somebody else for not getting it.
Yeah.
I
think there's a component.
If I have the vaccine, why am I worried about other people? What is wrong?
I really think that's twofold. One, there's a component of self-reinforcement that comes with other people doing what you did. It co-signs your decision as correct. So when people refuse to do what you chose to do, it is the implication that they're saying you were wrong.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
People take that
something.
personally, when most people I know who are unvaccinated would literally say, I don't care that you're vaccinated, that's your choice and good for you. I'm just doing what I think is best for me, and that may not be the same, and that's okay. But people who are vaccinated made a commitment. Mm-hmm. So they're much more invested than people who are unvaccinated. They're now invested in the success of this vaccine because they committed to it. And I think that becomes, like you had said, it becomes more of an emotional thing and less of an analytical thing.
It's a tribal team mentality. I joined this team, and the only way I can be friends with you or like you is if you're on my team. It's very high school. Like, I can't believe in the adult world how much high school is still prevalent, like the attitudes of high school.
Oh, you're not kidding.
You know what I mean? Like,
I didn't realize that until I ran for school board.
I can imagine.
Holy moly. It's one big junior high out there.
Like,
it's nuts.
It's crazy. I don't get. I always thought, like, I can't wait to get out of this bullshit drama and be an adult because adults are sensible. It's like, damn, though. I'd rather be back in high school.
Some adults are sensible, and what ends up happening is we surround ourselves with the other sensible ones, and then we end up on Sensible Island, where nobody wants to talk to us.
Yeah, exactly.
And we just talk to each other.
You're not cool.
No, we're not cool. We are definitely not cool.
Do you think there's a window of sensibility, like maybe from 20 to 30 years old? Do you think resides.
No, I think your
An
age
area
your
of-
age is way off. I think it's from like 6 to 14.
Of sensibility?
If you are going to teach somebody to think rationally and you're going to teach somebody to be a sensible adult, your time window to teach those
Okay.
traits is from the age of 6 until about the age of 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
Once they hit 13, 14, they don't care what you say anymore. They're going to do whatever they're going to do, but the lessons you imparted will at least nag at them.
Yeah.
And obviously before 6, they're basically puppies, so who cares? But if you wait until they're 20, 25, forget it. They've already established their brain pathways. Like, if they're an unsensible person, they will spend their life as an unsensible person. This is how they think. And we're all like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up with very logical parents, and I turned into a very logical man. Like, I'm 100% sure I would have been very different if I had had some crazy off-the-wall people raising me.
Yeah.
I definitely would not be this bastion of logic and gorgeousness. Why'd you both laugh at that?
It's subjective.
I don't understand.
I just the way
It wasn't a joke.
It was beautiful the way it rolled off your tongue.
You
I thought it
prepared
was.
Truth hurts. I've been sitting on that one for weeks. Just waiting for the opportunity.
that. You wrote it after last week's episode. He's like, I can't wait. I'm going to bring it up at some point.
Well, do you think like you know?
that I'm a bald male model.
So I mean, you
Who's
get.
overweight and middle-aged.
I think you get to a point in your.
Cassie.
My real question is,
Yes.
you get to a point in your life where, you know, like you maybe become a little biased in your opinion. So do you think that there's an age bracket where people are making the most logical decisions without bias? That there's a period of time where, as you grow up, you know you're learning. Even if you grow up with the ability to use logic, at some point in time, when does your bias come in and contaminate that? You know, I'm just curious if there, you know.
I think as humans, we're always going to have bias, but it's a matter of having the ability to look at your biases and figure out whether they're proper or not. I very much, in my early 20s, maybe late teens, early 20s, I was very opinionated on certain things. And then towards the end of college, I'd always had a quest for knowledge, right? I always looked at things from a different opinion, but I was still this is my world, and it's very much the right way, and everything else you think is terrible. So I've lived in that, but I've gotten to the point where I've been able to see things from multiple angles and take things very analytical. There was a point where I was a very emotional person. Like, I could snap very easily. But I've gotten to the point where I'm very fact-based, very logical in my thought processes. And I removed my own biases because I was given the ability to view it from different angles, which taught me how to think proper. So I think if you're never exposed to the other side, it's an echo chamber, right? So we're around people, and we're going to surround ourselves with people who think like us or believe in the things we do. And if you don't ever break yourself from that mold, you're going to always have that bias.
I mean, that's pretty much the whole concept behind wisdom.
Right, exactly.
Right? And I have a theory that the concept of the wise old man comes very much from the fact that, look, winning makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Losing teaches you lessons.
Yes.
And you've got to have a bunch of losses under your belt before you figure some stuff out. And a lot of young people don't necessarily get that. And that's fine. That's all part of the evolution. I didn't get it when I was young.
Yeah.
But you got to take your lumps and you got to learn from them. And for those who are self-actualized enough to actually learn from the failures, they gain wisdom. It is a gained trait. Not everybody gets it. Not everybody ends up an old wise man or an old wise woman. You know, some people turn into the crazy bastard in a trailer park that's yelling at his TV, and we all turn into.
Exactly.
But some people are self-actualized enough that they can take those losses and turn them into innate knowledge. So to answer your original question, Jimmy, I would say that it's not the youth that are going to be the most self-actualized amongst us. It's going to be the ones who have lived life but have not gotten to the point where they're spent.
Yeah.
That magic age, I had a mentor, John Gerhardt, and he used to tell me your prime earning ages were 35 to 55. And he was like, and a lot of people in their 20s get upset at this comment because they don't want to have to work hard to get to the point where they're making what they think they're worth. And he said, but it never changes the fact that you spend your 20s gaining experience, your early 30s building a career. 35 to 55 is when you're peaked. And then 55 to 65 is you organizing it all for your exit plan. And by his theory, and I think it's pretty solid, I would say that 35 to 55 is probably you're in your peak.
Mm-hmm.
You've got enough knowledge and wisdom, you've taken enough losses, you've learned enough things that you can really gain some wisdom, but you still have the energy to do something with it.
Exactly.
And I think those are the people who I think really change the world. Everybody's like, oh, this next generation of 20-year-olds will change the world. No, the next generation of 20-year-olds will listen to whatever you can feed them in a proper marketing format. Mm-hmm. It's the 35 to 55-year-olds who are creating that marketing format.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are the ones that are
okay.
Are
With someone that
society.
With that said, then, I mean, we've got, politicians that are 70, 80 years old. I mean, at what point in time does wisdom begin to flake?
I honestly do not understand why we allow people to be elected to public office who are in their 80s. I am just, I'm like, why would you want to be in public office when you're in your 80s?
I mean, people who run for that scale of office aren't just running because they're trying to do the right thing. They're doing it because they want some power, right?
I think a lot.
Like there's an inherent want
Or is
or
that-
desire for power.
Or it's legacy.
Legacy, yep.
I mean, legacy is a big part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make that final stab at something great.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want to work that job? I
I want to work that job.
yeah, but good hours, great pay,
Wait, which job
good
are we talking
benefits.
about?
Being a politician in DC.
Oof.
And then you get like recess, you get like 2 months off for holidays.
Yeah, so you can go back and get yelled at by your constituents for 2
They
weeks.
just close the door. They don't listen anyway, so.
That's true. They don't.
I
I don't know. I
can't.
think we've gone off the rails a bit here, but I see what you're saying.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. What I do want to do though is we've got 9 minutes left in the podcast, so there is something here. So talking about the vaccine real quick, there is something that I mentioned to these guys before the cast. I didn't realize people didn't know this. I keep saying the Moderna prophylactic and the Johnson & Johnson prophylactic, and I say that with purpose, or I air quote the word vaccine. And I don't say that because I'm down on what's been invented here in the last year and a half. I think it's a true modern miracle what we've been able to do in such a short period of time. I say that because none of these treatments that we've created qualify as a vaccine. I do not agree with the word vaccine being used, period, because they're not vaccines. But what's very disturbing to me, and Jimmy, can you pull this up real quick? Is if you look at dictionary.com and you look up the definition of the word vaccine, very clearly an mRNA treatment that elicits an immunoresponse that may or may not help with the virus does not fall under this. I mean, the words that are used here is usually employs an innocuous form of the disease agent to preventative inoculation to confer immunity. There's no immunity. We've already talked about that. There's definitely no inoculation going on. We've already talked about that. This definition does not cover what we are calling the COVID-19 virus at all. Jimmy, flip over to the Merriam-Webster definition. Merriam-Webster definition clearly says, if you go down to section B, preparation of genetic material such as a strand of synthesized messenger RNA that is used by the cells of the body to produce an antigen substance. That does cover what we're doing with these vaccines. Jimmy, do me a favor. Can you flip over to the screen where we did the Wayback Machine and went back to previous definitions in Merriam-Webster? What are you in, 2000? Go to the last entry in 2000.
This was
whatever.
or
What is it?
2020.
What's
November-
the last entry?
November
so,
5th.
So that means the last time they changed it into 2020 was November 5th. So anything after this would be 2021. So this is the definition as of December 31st, 2020. And survey says a preparation of killed microorganisms, living attenuated organisms, or living fully virulent organisms that is administered to produce or artificially increase immunity to a particular disease. All right, so we changed the definition of vaccine to fit what we're doing now. This bothers me at a level that I can't even express with words. I need like symbols or maybe a pen and like a big chalkboard, or I don't know, like some sort of like maybe interpretive dance. Like
Emojis.
I don't have the verbal capacity to be able to express how much changing the definition of words because we don't like that what we're doing doesn't fit them bothers me.
So to just clarify, like this is an old.
To clarify
exactly what we
to
did.
clarify,
so people
a year
know.
ago, both Merriam-Webster, Dictionary.com, Cambridge University, every major dictionary in the world agreed that what we call the COVID-19 vaccine was not a vaccine.
So this is what Webster's website said
No,
on November 5th.
Is this Web?
This is
Yes,
Merriam-Webster.
Merriam-Webster. This
So-
is what it said
so
as
this-
of December 31st, 2020.
So this Wayback Machine is showing us what Webster
yes.
said on November 5th, 2020.
Yep.
And now today.
Well, December 31st, we'll say, because there was no changes to this definition
Oh,
after
okay.
November
That's
6th.
what that means. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then, yeah.
And then the current definition is completely different and
So
purely
now-
made to encompass these current COVID-19 vaccines into the definition of vaccine. So instead of continuing to work on our vaccine to make it into an actual vaccine, we decided that the easier route is to just change the definition of vaccine. That is so wrong on so many levels.
It's a marketing tactic.
It's a marketing tactic, but it's in the dictionary. So either we come up with a new term for what these mRNA treatments are that encompasses what they actually are, and it's not vaccine, because the definition of vaccine has been the same for 50 years, or we stop calling it a vaccine. But changing the definition, I mean, that's insanity.
Well,
And
it's-
Dictionary.com
especially-
obviously wasn't on board with this marketing tactic because they didn't change their definition. They're still like, no, I'm still going with the
Well, and
old
especially the biggest concern here is that Fauci's on the hook here for like what is going on, what is right. So this is changed to meet a narrative for his argument to say I did or didn't do something. Now we're changing. Is this correct? Isn't this what's happening? Like he
This
changed.
is wrong. Changing words to meet politics is wrong.
So what was it? So, well, actually, that was gain of function.
That
he
was gain of
changed.
function. I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
who did this. I don't know if it was Merriam-Webster desperately
Yeah.
trying to validate the vaccines. I don't know if it was somebody going to Merriam-Webster and saying, "Hey, you need to change some stuff." I don't know what happened here, nor am I going to speculate on that. What I am telling you is this is proof that it did happen. And it didn't happen across the board because Dictionary.com is clearly not on board with this yet. I don't know if they will be at some point. But at the end of the day, we changed the definition of a word because we didn't like that people were disagreeing with that word being used for something that we want to support. And that is a problem. Like you can't just change the definition of words. You just modify the English language to fit your particular need at that particular time.
So then now
Or maybe you can.
and
Would
now
say
you take.
Merriam-Webster would tell you that they can.
But now
I
you take-
suppose Merriam-Webster could.
So but now it's taken a step further where the gain of function research and the definition of what gain of function is being changed by Fauci to meet what he did so that he doesn't.
And I don't know.
So
if
that
we
he
have
didn't break-
We don't have the time to go into the gain of function
Yeah.
stuff.
So that he didn't break the rules.
But I will say that the gain of function discussion that you're getting into, basically what Jimmy's saying is that there was a huge debate in the Senate, and Dr. Fauci was there, where he was being accused of supporting gain of function research at the Wuhan lab. And he said that he was not. And the senators who were grilling him actually brought up his definition of gain of function and slammed him with it. And he basically has been, ever since, changing the definition of gain of function. Again, not too dissimilar from changing the definition of vaccine, which is a very dangerous course of action to follow. Like, if we cannot agree on what words mean, then we can't communicate. This is why I have a problem with this. Like, if you need to make a new word, make it. We do it all the time. But a word needs to mean what it means, or else language doesn't mean anything. And a word changing over time happens, but a word changing regularly, constantly, because it's politically expedient, is fundamentally a problem for everyone. I don't care where you lean. That's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
Jimmy's up for it.
Because there's a lot of words.
It's like 100 of them.
And if they change them all, we're really in trouble.
I don't even know most of them already, and I've been speaking this language for 43 years. Like,
Pretty
if they
soon-
change them all, I'm hosed.
Pretty soon our sentences to each other would be completely different.
I took 3 years of German, and I know 4 words. All right, like, if you start changing all the words again, I'm gonna be dead before I figure English out again. Like, I'm not good at languages. This is not gonna go well. So, all right, we're out of time here.
Well, you have
Final
one more-
thoughts. Let's do final thoughts.
You had one more webpage you wanted to talk about. It sounded like it was pretty
Oh,
important.
I
at
don't
the
think we have
beginning.
time to get into that. We already talked about it. That was I'd go off to the viral. Why don't you finish on the viral page? The next one.
This one?
That's just the book I recommend. And I
Oh,
recommend
yeah.
anybody that cares
Okay.
about fact. This is a
Yeah.
great book. I strongly recommend it. Very fact-based, very analytical, very, very much get the knowledge you need to actually have a real conversation, not a CNN or a Fox News, fluff piece. Final thoughts, Tyler. You're first this week.
Oh, great. Let's see. Maybe it's just more advice of find your own facts or find the facts. See through. Don't just get it from the first place you find or hear it from. Seek out what you can and try not to form any opinions until you've truly done your due diligence with everything, which is, I think, what our goal was here.
I hope we achieved it.
I hope so too.
I think we did.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe not.
probably not.
Probably not.
We tried.
Knuckles high. My man.
22 people.
Don't be like that. That was just one platform. And our least platform. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Final
thoughts.
thought for me. My final thought, I don't know, man. I just look around you. Stop watching the news and look around you. Talk to the people that you hang with and look at what's going on in your world. And stop watching the news.
And don't be afraid to step outside
I mean-
of the people you hang around with.
I don't see in real life what's being talked about on the news. That's the most.
That's a great point.
That's
a
fantastic.
great
I mean-
point.
Yep. It's a fantastic point.
That's well played, sir. I can't believe that didn't come up before the end. My final thought is I just want to give a shout out to the private school in Florida that is forcing kids who get the vaccine to quarantine. Not that I support it, not that I say it's the right move, but I think it is a wildly interesting take on this banning people because of their personal medical choices. And to see a private school in Florida say we have evidence that the vaccines cause responses that could be detrimental to other people makes us concerned. And if we're gonna make people quarantine for getting sick, we should also make people quarantine for taking experimental drugs. And it's a fascinating thing. I think we're gonna see multiple lawsuits over it. I'm excited to see how they play out. But I will say, as a HIPAA compliancy, as a privacy expert, is one of the things I do with my career. This whole concept that you can ask somebody their vaccination status is insane to me. I've already told everybody that works for our company I will never ask them because it's a violation of HIPAA and I can't do it because I'm a HIPAA compliancy expert. But beyond that, it feels wrong on multiple levels.
Yeah.
And I won't participate in something that I conceive to be wrong. But I appear to be in the minority.
I think we are, because there's very much, and I noticed this working with people who were younger than me. It was all about sharing, like every detail of every second.
Maybe that's the problem.
And I think that's the problem.
I
I
don't-
grew up
I
in
don't-
a keep your shit to yourself kind of
Yes.
world. Like your problems are your problems, and you deal with them.
And if you're having trouble dealing with them,
And
you go
you
to your
just-
family.
You just
and
show
you
up
talk
with
to your
your best
family.
you. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, and you
Exactly.
Your close inner circle is
Right.
who you go to. You don't put
Yeah.
it on the internet.
Yeah, you don't walk up to somebody you met in the grocery store like, I'm
Yeah.
constipated this week.
Yeah.
You know, that type of stuff.
If somebody walked up to me at the supermarket and said that, I'd laugh so hard in their face and then I'd feel awful.
I'd be like, Jimmy, get out of here.
Jimmy.
No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's. I think that it's more of a product that the younger generations are all about, sharing
The
everything.
overshare.
Yeah, which is way outside of my
Well, that's what
worldview.
Maybe we're just old timers.
that's
then.
what the
There's none of
all-seeing
us.
be.
all-seeing eye loves that concept.
I mean, we share here. Isn't that kind of like that? Isn't that what we're doing right now?
I mean, kind of, but
You're still kind of quiet here.
yeah, I am. Yeah, but I don't know.
Well, no, not
oversharing.
everything. We're only
Just saying.
sharing what we agreed to share.
So you're not constipated.
I'm not constipated,
Fair enough.
but now I just overshared.
Better overshared than over.
Something.
Everyone, thank you so much. I have no idea if we enlightened you on anything. I don't even remember the last hour. It was a blur. But I feel like these guys did an amazing job. So Jimmy, thank you. Tyler, thank you. Everyone, all 22 of you watching, thank you so much. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Tell your friends about us.
The Broken Agenda Podcast. Sponsored by Laughing Rock Technology.